Rob Pilatus, Fab Morvan, and Frank Farian were responsible for a musical project that generated millions of dollars in profits and won many awards. But there was only one small inconvenience. It was all a hoax. 32 years ago, the duo Milli Vanilli won the Grammy for Best New Artist and declared themselves more talented than Bob Dylan, Mick Jagger, and Elvis Presley. The problem is that the duo did not sing a single note of their songs. This was one of the biggest scandals in the history of pop music, that ended with the Grammy Academy demanding, for the first and only time in history, that they return the award. Who started this great fraud was the German producer Frank Farian, who already knew the world of music. Few years before, he had created the Boney M Group. He knew that with good music, an attractive production, a fresh sound, good voices, and a strong stage image, he would succeed once again. Frank was once in a nightclub back in his country when he heard the song Girl You Know It's True by American band Newmarks. He immediately knew that it could be a much bigger hit. So, he proceeded to assemble a group of singers to create a new version, mixing their voices, taking the original hip-hop track, and mixing it with a bit of Eurodance. His version quickly became popular in Europe. Now, he just needed faces to go with the music. That's when he set up Milli Vanilli, taking advantage of the incredible bodies and unique dancing skills of two handsome young black men, one German and the other French, who were looking for success with their performances in Munich, the capital of Bavaria, Germany. In an interview with the New York Times in 1990, Robert Pilatus revealed the reasons why he and Fab Morvan followed this path. We lived with two other musicians in Munich. We had nothing to eat and we were unhappy. We wanted to be stars. Suddenly, a guy gave us an opportunity and we took advantage of it. In fact, before they were famous, they were both just a pair of anonymous young guys, trying to make a living as they could in the ghettos of European cities. Rob passed the first 4 years of his life in the Munich orphanage, while Fab was born in Paris. They quickly became friends after meeting at dance class. Although Rob Pilatus and Fab Morvan also had vocal skills, they both stood out because of their looks like the North American R&B groups and edgy dance moves. After the irresistible first single, Girl You Know It's True, became a hit in Europe, Frank Farian put Rob and Fab as the face of Milli Vanilli, without the need for either of them to sing a single note. The duo spent the entire summer of 1988 promoting the song across Europe, reaching the top 5 in 14 countries and number 1 in 3, West Germany, Austria, and Spain. And so, European audiences assumed that these two guys with the culture clothes, muscular bodies, and Caribbean dreadlocks were, of course, the real singers of the songs. It was a crazy idea. I thought I was just going to play in clubs and that nothing would happen. I never thought it would be a success, but it was too late, and I was too embarrassed to clarify the truth, confessed Frank Farian to the newspaper Los Angeles Times. Milli Vanilli's debut album, recorded by studio singers entitled All or Nothing, was released in 1988 in Europe, and later gained the name Girl You Know It's True to be released in the USA, where it sold about 7 million copies. The album was for about 78 weeks on the Billboard 200 album chart, peaking at number 1 for 8 weeks, making Milli Vanilli a huge success around the world, which resulted in a Germany Award for Best New Artist in 1990. Their biggest hits included Girl You Know It's True, Baby Don't Forget My Number, Blame It on the Rain, and Girl I'm Gonna Miss You.
Girl, you know it's true. Wanna spend my life with you. Blame it on the rain that was falling. Blame it on the stars.
Now I'm sitting here, wasting my time. I just don't know what I should.
With such success, the duo began to change their behavior, particularly Rob, who began to have extreme mood changes and erratic behavior. He also became addicted to cocaine. In an interview with Time magazine, he compared Milli Vanilli to Bob Dylan, Elvis Presley, Paul McCartney, and Mick Jagger, and was ridiculed for his statements. Both were pressuring their producer Frank Farian to let them sing all songs for the next album. About this, Rob Pilatus once said, "We would ask Frank when we would make some artistic contribution and he would say, yes, but now we need you to go out and promote it. I'll do it, just work with us." That's how he tied us up. After Frank released the album, He told us it was too late to stop now, since the single was such a hit. He said, "Now you've got to move on. I will cover you. No one will find out. Here, I'll give you 2,000 euros in advance. We have never had a hit before, so we went for it. We played with fire, and now we know, but it's too late." The first questions about Milli Vanilli's authenticity arose when MTV executive Beth McCarty Miller noticed the duo's accent when they arrived for their first interview. In another interview with the Los Angeles Times, Fab Morvan said, "Every time we did an interview, reporters would hear my French accent or Rob's German accent and say, 'No way, how could these guys have sung the songs?'" The farce began to lose strength in July 1989, when, in an MTV presentation, the track "Girl You Know It's True" suffered a technical failure and kept repeating the chorus several times. The artists panicked, revealing that they were just using playbacks. Not knowing how to handle the situation, they left the stage in a hurry.
Girl, you know it's 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 girl.
Rumors continued to grow, but in the pre-internet world, they spread much more slowly. Charles Shaw, one of the studio singers responsible for "Girl You Know It's True," told any journalist who would listen that he made the song. Frank Farian gave him 140,000 euros to keep his mouth shut. However, when Rob Pilatus and Fab Morvan refused to go along with the lie if they were not allowed to sing on the second album, the producer held an announced press conference where he announced that he had fired the duo and confessed that none of them sang in the record. Rob Pilatus spoke about this in a Los Angeles Times article. "I feel like a mosquito being squeezed. The last 2 years of our lives, we have lived a nightmare. We've had to lie to everyone. We are real singers, but Frank Farian's maniac never let us express ourselves." The Grammy for Best New Artist from 1990 was subsequently revoked for the first and only time in the history of music awards. At a press conference, the duo apologized, blamed Frank Farian for everything, and stated that everyone at their label was aware of the lie, including their president, Clive Davis. Journalists were relentless at the press conference, demanding they sing and questioning which other parts of their bodies were fake. After that, they lost their agents, and even their girlfriend stopped answering the phone. Rob's mother asked him to change his last name. Things were really ugly. The duo was kicked out from their US label Arista Records, and consequently their hit album pulled from the company's catalog. In the United States, 25 class actions were filed demanding back the money of the records, concert tickets, and merchandising products. The record company reached an agreement in which about 10 million people affected could claim a percentage of the price they paid. The label claimed knowing nothing about the hoax, and its vice president, Ray Lott, did not hesitate to define Frank Farian as a creative genius. In an interview in November 1990 to the Washington Post, the producer downplayed the fallout of the hoax and said, "2 people in the studio and 2 people on the stage. A part recorded, another seen. It is an art form itself. Where is the betrayal? Did anyone believe that the Village People or the Monkees sang their songs? Milli Vanilli's music was fantastic. People were happy. What's the problem? Please everyone. Everyone has been doing this for 25 years. Madonna, Janet Jackson, all those perfectly choreographed shows that audiences now demand." The consequences of the hoax also spilled over to MTV. Many music critics blamed the network for this embarrassment. The video channel had been revolutionizing pop music for a decade, which already depended as much on the visual spectacle as the music itself, and promoting the aesthetic illusion of artists such as Michael Jackson, Madonna, and Paula Abdul. So when the stars went on tour, they were forced to deliver a show that went far beyond the music. So much so that they used pre-recorded voice tracks so they could dance till they couldn't breathe. MTV's relentless support and broadcast, fascinated by the sexual drive and sophisticated looks of Rob Pilatus and Fab Morvan, were key to Milli Vanilli's triumph among a generation of young people who consumed everything that came out on MTV. After the scandal involving the duo, Frank Farian tried to get around the situation by reformulating Milli Vanilli with 2 of the real voices from the first and only album. The original voices of Milli Vanilli belonged to Charles Shaw, Brad Howell, John Davis, Jody, and Linda Rocco.
Girl, you know it's true. Girl, you know it's true.
Ooh, 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 I love you.
I'm in love with you, girl, cause you're on my mind. You the one I think about most every time.
Charles Shaw and Brent Howell joined Gina Mohammed and Ray Horton to form the new group now called The Real Milli Vanilli. They released an album in Europe entitled The Moment of Truth in 1991. For the United States, Frank Farian did not want to go back to using a name that had become synonymous with fraud, and ended up naming the group Try and Be. He added 3 new songs to the album and renamed it. None of the initiatives was very successful. In the 32 years since pop music's biggest scandal, the music industry has changed its relationship on lip syncing, but that gradual acceptance came too late for the Milli Vanilli boys. After that event, Rob Pilatus and Fab Morvan tried to move on. In an attempt to mock their misfortune, the pair shot a commercial for a band of gum in 1991 in which the song sung by them suffered a technical failure.
So these guys sing for themselves. Carefree, sugarless.
In December of that year, Rob threatened suicide and had to be pulled from a hotel balcony by the police. In 1992, Fab and Rob moved to Los Angeles and signed with the label Joss Entertainment Group. They recorded a second album under the name Rob and Fab, which was released in 1993, now with their real voices. However, due to lack of publicity, poor distribution, along with zero credibility, the album only sold 2,000 copies. In 1997, producer Frank Farian agreed to produce a new Milli Vanilli album with Rob and Fab on vocals. A comeback album titled Back in Attack was recorded a year later, but Rob had struggled with several personal issues by this point. He turned to drugs, committed a series of vandalism acts, and robbery in 1996. He was subsequently sentenced to 3 months in a prison and 6 months in a rehabilitation clinic. Frank took Rob out of jail, but the night before the new album tour, on April 2, 1998, he was found dead in a hotel room in Frankfurt, Germany. He was only 32 years old. According to the police, the cause of death was an accidental overdose of alcohol and prescription drugs. In 2013, Fab Morvan spoke to Oprah Winfrey about his friend's dark times. Rob didn't handle humiliation well, and the only way he found to deal with it was his addiction. When I heard of his death, I promised that I would make the name Milli Vanilli mean that when you fall, you pick yourself up and move on. In 2003, Fab released a solo album, Love Revolution, with all songs composed, produced, and performed by him. The singer performed duet concerts with John Davis, one of the original vocalists of Milli Vanilli, under the name Face Meets Voice, a true Milli Vanilli experience. His career, however, has focused on DJ events and giving motivational speeches. In November 2019, he released his latest single called Hold Up, which to date has little over 13,000 views on YouTube. Fab has already said he won't give up and wants to return to the rankings, but this time without Milli Vanilli. About that, he said, "I was always underestimated. My dream was to be a singer and songwriter. Today I'm able to look in the mirror and be happy with what I see." Although they were used as a scapegoat, they were far from the only dance pop and the Europop group that didn't sing their own music. They were simply the most successful and visible, as their incorporation of rap made them more attractive to the North American market. Regardless, we have to give this duo credit for all the success and album sales. Ultimately, it was Rob and Fab's image that sold the songs. They did their job. They were the face of Milli Vanilli.
Girl, you know it's true.
For more videos like this, subscribe to our channel and hit the like button. You can leave a suggestion for a new video in the comments below. Thank you so much. See you in the next video.